What happens when a judge mocks a quiet black man in open court, thinking he's just another nobody in a cheap suit? He never imagined the truth would bring the entire courtroom to a standstill. I wasn't planning to be anybody's hero that morning. I had my coffee in one hand, a grocery bag in the other, and just enough energy to mind my business. You get to a certain age, I'm 57 now, and you learn the art of moving through the world like water, smooth, quiet, and always watching. But even still, trouble has a way of sniffing you out. The parking lot behind the courthouse was a mess that day, ice slicked like a skating rink, people sliding more than walking. That's when I saw her. Small lady, maybe mid-70s, bent over like time had been leaning on her a little too hard. She was struggling with 3 plastic bags, wobbling on a patch of ice like a ballerina on her last nerve. "Ma'am," I said, already stepping closer. "You're gonna break a hip out here." She chuckled, one of those tired, grateful sounds. I reached for her bags before she could say no. We weren't but 10 feet from her car when she slipped. It wasn't dramatic, no loud cry, no slow-motion fall, just that quiet, awful thud that older bones make when they hit pavement. I dropped everything. My coat hit the ground before she did, and I was already kneeling beside her. "Are you okay? Can you move?" She winced and nodded, but tears were edging her eyes. I pulled out my phone and dialed security. "Yeah, I need someone out here right now. An elderly woman just fell. Bring a first aid kit, and maybe a little human decency while you're at it." I stood up, waving my arms as the guard strolled over like he was on vacation. Now, I don't like to assume anything about a man, but the look he gave me, like I was a threat just for having skin, well, let's just say it wasn't new. "Sir," he barked, "step away from the woman." "She fell," I replied, already irritated. "I helped her. I called you." He ignored that. His hand dropped to his hip. "No weapon. But that gesture?" "Yeah, I've seen it before. I need to see your ID. For helping someone? You're interfering in a medical emergency." "She's the emergency, not me." By then, the old lady was trying to speak. "He helped me," she said. Her voice was thin but clear. "I would have been stuck if he hadn't." But he wasn't listening. He was staring at me like I'd just confessed to something. Another guard came around, whispering something that made the first one stiffen. That's when they decided to call the cops. So there I was, standing in a puddle of melting snow, holding someone else's grocery bag, and suddenly, I'm the headline. "Man detained in parking lot incident." All because I had the nerve to care. The officers weren't aggressive, but that didn't mean much. The second one barely looked me in the eye as he asked again for ID. I gave it. No attitude, no backtalk. I know the rules. You live long enough. You memorize the game. Still, they wrote up some nonsense. Disturbance, failure to comply, and my personal favorite, aggressive behavior in a public space. I didn't even raise my voice. When they handed me the court summons, I just nodded. No point arguing. But inside, I was boiling. You spend a lifetime teaching your kids to be better, calmer, stronger. You teach them dignity. And then the system taps you on the shoulder and says, "Nice try, but none of that matters." I showed up to court a week later. I wore my best suit, the same one I'd worn to my daughter's graduation. My shoes were shined, my folder thick with paperwork and witness statements. The woman I helped even sent in a handwritten letter. Didn't matter. The courtroom was stuffy, full of fluorescent lights and tired people pretending not to be tired. And then came Judge Howard Grayson, the kind of man whose face looks like it's been carved out of old stone and bitter coffee. He didn't even look up when I walked in. I sat, waited. When my name was called, I stood like I had purpose. And that's when it started. He flipped through my case file like it was a menu at a diner, smirked, looked me up and down like I was the punchline to a joke he'd already told himself. "Malcolm Ellis," he said slowly, dragging my name out like it tasted funny. "Failure to comply, interfering with security, aggressive conduct, quite the resume." I stayed quiet. I'd seen this act before. "Let me guess," he went on. "You were just trying to help someone. Is that the story you're going with?" I blinked. "Yes, Your Honor." He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and chuckled. The whole room heard it. "Oh, we've got ourselves a good Samaritan, folks," he said. "Tell me, Mr. Ellis, were you also curing cancer that day? Or just rescuing old ladies on ice?" Laughter. From the back. From the bailiff. Even the stenographer smirked. I stood there like a statue. Because that's what you do when the world wants you to crack. I could feel the heat behind my ears. My palms were sweating. Not from shame. From restraint. You see, I've spent a lifetime mastering the art of silence. It's the only thing that keeps black men like me from becoming headlines. He kept talking, but I stopped listening. My hand slid to the folder. Inside was the letter, photos of the scene, even a copy of the security footage I'd requested through a formal complaint. But he didn't care. His mind was made up before I even said good morning. He smacked the gavel once. "Next hearing in 3 weeks," he said, like my time meant nothing. "Let's hope you find a better story before then." As the bailiff escorted me out, I looked back, not in anger, in understanding. Because now I knew exactly what kind of man I was dealing with. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this unfolds. Stay for Chapter 2. The tension's only just beginning. You ever walk into a room and feel the weight shift? Like your presence just messed up somebody's idea of what the world's supposed to look like? That's how it felt when I stepped into the courthouse the second time. Same hallway. Same squeaky tile floors. Same bailiff who looked like he moonlighted as a used car salesman with an attitude problem. Only this time, I wasn't here to be polite. I had papers. I had proof. And I had a fire building in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. The kind that comes when you've had enough of being patient. But let's rewind for a minute. After that joke of a first hearing, I went home and sat on my porch with a glass of iced tea, and that folder still clutched in my hand. My daughter called. She's a public defender in Atlanta. Sharp, fierce. She heard the tone in my voice and didn't even let me finish. "Daddy," she said, "you're not going back in there empty-handed again. Not this time." She was right. So I got to work. I pulled every record I had. The complaint I filed with security. The letter from Mrs. Clements. God bless her. She wrote 2 more pages detailing how she slipped and how I was the only one who cared. I got a copy of the incident report. And the footage? Oh, the footage was gold. But here's the thing they don't tell you. Even when you have the truth, you still gotta fight to get someone to look at it. The clerk's office gave me the runaround for days. "Come back tomorrow." That's not in our system. You'll need to file a different request. By the 3rd visit, I brought coffee and donuts, not to bribe anyone, but just to disarm them. Because sometimes that's the only way to survive in a place designed to exhaust you. Finally, one young guy in the back office, Marcus, bless his soul, saw my face and said, "Sir, I'll get it for you." This is ridiculous. He handed me a USB drive like it was contraband. When I watched the footage at home, I had to pause it halfway through. Not because I was shocked, but because I was angry. Real angry. There I was, helping this woman, and you could see clear as day the guard marching up, hand on his belt, like I'd just robbed the place. And me, calm as ever. Not a single raised hand, no shouting, just concern. I printed stills. I highlighted timestamps. I even wrote a breakdown of every second. My daughter proofread it and added some legal polish. So yeah, I walked into that second hearing prepared, not just legally, but emotionally. I was done hoping for fairness. Now I wanted it seen. I walked past the metal detectors with the same suit, same shoes, but a new stride. The kind that says, "I know what you think I am, and I'm about to show you how wrong you are." They called my name. I stepped in. Judge Grayson didn't even look up at first, just shuffled papers like he was late for lunch. "Mr. Ellis," he said dryly, "I assume you're ready to continue spinning your tale." There it was again, that smirk. Like he was watching a sitcom rerun he already knew the ending to. I set the folder on the table, slid it forward. "Actually, Your Honor, I have new documentation and visual evidence." That got his attention. He sat back, raised an eyebrow like I'd just spoken Latin. "You have footage?" "Yes, sir, from the building's own security system. I obtained it through a formal request." He hesitated, glanced at the bailiff, who shrugged like he didn't know how to process a black man with receipts. "Very well," the judge said. "Let's see it." They set up the screen. I handed the drive over. And then we watched. And oh, did we watch. There I was, plain as day, helping that woman, calm, collected. The guard showing up, barking orders, ignoring the woman trying to speak. And me, standing there like the only grown-up in the room. For 30 seconds after it ended, the room was dead silent. You could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. Then the judge cleared his throat. "Well, that certainly paints a different picture." Different picture? That man had mocked me in public, dismissed my voice, and laughed in my face. And now he had the audacity to act like we'd just found some nuance? I didn't say a word, just looked at him. Calm. Director. Then he asked, "Do you have anything else to add, Mr. Ellis?" "I do," I said, and pulled out the letter from Mrs. Clements. "This is a statement from the woman I assisted. She couldn't attend today, but she wanted to make her side of the story clear." He read it, slowly, and I watched something change in his eyes. Just for a second. Like he realized he'd been playing a role he didn't write, but memorized anyway. Still, his pride wouldn't let him admit it. "Court will reconvene for final judgment in 5 business days," he muttered, tapping the gavel like it owed him money. "You're dismissed." I left the room, not triumphant, not yet, but steady. Solid. Because, for once, the system had to look itself in the mirror, and it didn't like what stared back. This is the turning point. Everything you've waited for. It's right here. Stick around for Chapter 3, where the tables turn in a way no one saw coming. 5 business days. That's how long I had to wait for the next hearing. Let me tell you something. There are hours in your life that just pass, and then there are hours that weigh on you. These days didn't pass. They sat on my chest. I didn't sleep much. Not because I was scared, but because I couldn't stop thinking. I kept playing that moment in the courtroom over and over, the way Judge Grayson looked at me like I was wasting his time, until the footage played. Then it shifted. Not a lot, just a flicker. But I saw it. You know that look people give you when they realize you're not what they thought? When they've been judging the book by the wrong cover for so long, they forgot how to actually read? Yeah, he had that look. But pride's a stubborn thing, especially when it's been sitting on a bench with a gavel for 20 years. Now here's the part you won't believe. The night before my final hearing, I get a call. Unknown number. Normally I let those slide, but something told me to answer. "Mr. Ellis?" the voice said. Older. Measured. "Yes?" "This is Robert Welling, clerk to Judge Grayson." I didn't respond right away. Was this a setup? A warning? He continued. "The judge, he asked me to confirm your full background before tomorrow's session. He came across something and, well, sir, I believe there's been a significant oversight." Oversight? I almost laughed. That was one word for it. "Is there something you'd like to ask me, Mr. Welling?" I asked, slow and steady. There was a pause. Then he said, "Were you, at any point, involved with the Department of Justice?" Oh, now we were getting somewhere. You see, I spent 15 years in federal service. I wasn't just a desk jockey either. I was an internal affairs investigator. My job was to audit law enforcement systems, expose bias, investigate abuse, and write policy recommendations. And yes, I've testified in federal court more times than I care to count. But here's the kicker. I never broadcasted it. Never bragged, never made it a point to lead with that. It wasn't my title that defined me. It was my actions. But that night, something told me, maybe it's time he learned who I was. The courtroom was quieter that day. Tense. The air was different. Even the guards at the door stood a little straighter when I walked in, like someone had whispered something they didn't know how to process. Judge Grayson looked up as I approached the bench. His eyes held mine for a full second longer than before. "Mr. Ellis," he said, "before we begin, there's something I'd like to address on the record." I raised an eyebrow. "Yes, Your Honor." He cleared his throat. That little hesitation? That was the sound of a man swallowing his own ego. "It has come to the court's attention that you previously served with the Department of Justice Internal Affairs Division. Is that correct?" "It is." "And during your tenure, you reviewed more than 40 cases involving racial misconduct, procedural violations, and policy abuse." I finished for him. "Yes." The room went still. Not even the court reporter's fingers moved. "Why didn't you mention this before?" he asked, almost genuinely. I looked him square in the eye. "Because I wanted to be treated like every other citizen. Not better, not worse, just fair." That hit. You could feel it. Not just in him, in everyone listening. Judge Grayson leaned back, exhaled, and, for once, dropped the act. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Now that was unexpected. I misjudged you. I allowed personal bias and assumptions to influence my demeanor in this courtroom. That was not only unprofessional, it was wrong." It wasn't a loud moment. There was no audience applause, no swelling music. But that silence? It meant something. It meant everyone in that room had to sit with it. "I am dismissing all charges effective immediately," he continued. "And I'll be making a formal statement regarding this case and the broader need for procedural review within this district." I nodded. Not out of triumph, out of necessity. Because this wasn't just about me. It never was. As I walked out of that courtroom, something strange happened. The same guard who'd ignored me that first day, the one who smirked while I stood there humiliated, held the door open. No sarcasm, no attitude. He looked me in the eye and said, "Sir." I paused. "You have a good day." That was all. But it said everything. Out on the steps, I let the winter air hit my face. Crisp, honest, like a clean slate. My daughter called. She'd watched the whole hearing online. "You handled it like a king," she said. "No," I replied. "I handled it like a man who's tired of being quiet." I went home, poured myself a glass of tea, and sat on that same porch. You know what stuck with me most? It wasn't that the judge apologized. It was that he had to. Because for once, the system looked me in the face and had to say my name with respect. This is what justice sounds like when it finally speaks. And sometimes, it only listens once you remind it who you are.